curtain falls when the lights grow dim, but the dark remembers all of him. Ashes of a gentleman scattered in the rain. Every victory carved from pain. No crown, no throne, no one to blame. Just smoke and the echo of my name. Ashes of a gentleman carried by the wind. The story ends where it begins. Raise your glass, my time has come. Play one last song, then I'm done. I build my own prayer on broken ground with silence.
Welcome back to Fireside Chats, where we sit down, slow things down a little bit, and talk about the job and the stories and the people behind the badge. Today's episode is Greg Dietrich, a guy who's given nearly 3 decades to this fire service. Greg started his career back in 1995 in Memphis, Tennessee, coming up through EMS before making his way into the fireside. He put himself through fire school in Austin, Texas, grinding it out, working part-time at multiple departments, before finally getting that call that changed everything, getting hired full-time with the Collierville Fire Department in 1998. From there, his career took him through multiple departments, even overseas as a contract firefighter in Iraq, before spending the bulk of his career with Madisonville Fire Department, where he eventually promoted to lieutenant before retiring. Over the years, Greg's seen it all, from the toughest calls you can imagine to the moments that remind you exactly why we do this job. And like he says, this job isn't just something you do, it's who you are. So we're going to get into the stories, the lessons, the highs and the lows, and everything in between. So pull up a chair. This is Fireside Chats, and this is Greg Dietrich. Well, Greg, man, I'm glad you're here. I've never...
Well, I was just going to say, I know I'm thinking about your questions of how I got started. I was 28 when I got my first fire department job. But I got out of the service and was living in Memphis, and I was going to college at University of Memphis, and I was working for the Student Disabilities Office. So I'd work Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays because my classes were Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'd go around and help disabled students get to class and so forth. And the guy that did the same job on Tuesdays and Thursdays was taking an EMT class. And he left his book at the office, and I was flipping through it, and that was honestly like the first time that I thought, hey, this might be, something interesting, because I was like, I don't know if a 4-year degree for me is going to happen right now. So I ended up, I started EMT school in August of '95. That's a long time ago. And in Memphis, it was community college based, and it was like 2 semesters, and you went, and it was all based on like the fire, like Memphis Fire and all of the departments around Memphis work the same schedule that Madisonville works here. Like, 1 on, 1 off, 1 on, 1 off, 1 on, 4 off, which I guess they call that a California schedule. Yeah. And so, like, you could go to, you would get the same EMT class on Monday and Tuesday and the same class on Wednesday and Thursday, depending on what your schedule was. So I went to school, and then in April, before I even graduated, the company, it was called ASI, Ambulance Service. It was based out of Waverly, Tennessee, and they had a contract for the 911 service outside the city limits of Memphis, so the suburbs and so forth. So that was the 911 service. And then in the city, they did the hospital transport and the renal roundup and all that other stuff. Yeah. And they would hire you if you had your, if you were in EMT school and you had your CPR card as a driver. And so that was my first EMT job. And I worked Tuesday and Thursday from noon till 7 the next morning. So 2 18-hour shifts.
Well, was you still doing the disability thing, or?
No. I had quit. I had stopped doing, stopped doing, quit going to the university and went to the community college, to do EMT school. And that was my first EMT job. And that was like the first time I had ever seen a dead body.
But that was wild.
Well, the very first, they had the thing called the CR van, which was the corpse removal van. And yeah, and so they would call and be like, "Hey, we got a DOA out in the county. Here's the address." We'd jump in the van. It was just like a cargo van with a stretcher in the back, and we went out there to this first one, and it was a guy. It was in a fairly nice neighborhood in a cul-de-sac, and the guy he had committed suicide, and he was sitting in like a plastic chair outside on his patio next to his pool, and he had shot the top of his head off.
Yeah.
And he'd been there all day.
And that was your first dead body?
Yes.
Gosh, wait a minute.
I know. It was like jump into the deep end, right?
God.
And it was just, I don't know how, no, it's not graphic, I guess, but his neighbor that had a backyard that butted up next to his, how they found the guy was that the neighbor was mowing his yard and his dog was out running around with a bone. And it was part of the guy's skull.
Oh, man.
So
man, we're going to have to get that.
Yeah, I know. So that was the first first DOA that I had. And then, of course, when I was 25 at the time, when you first start in the service, you just want to have everything. You want to have, the trauma shears and pen lights and not all that and you're just jumping in knee deep into everything and in order to you graduate EMT school, you don't want to be picking up dialysis patients. You want to run 911 calls, and you had to be an IV, which is an advanced here, but to work in the county. So when I graduated EMT school in May, the IV class was over the summer, and I took it, and I landed. They had an opening with Collierville. How it was set up was they would put an ambulance in the firehouse, like used to be here.
Yeah.
So they had an ambulance at the Germantown, the Collierville, Millington, and the county stations. And so then the ambulance, you lived in the firehouse. That's the ambulance wasn't a fire department ambulance. And so that was honestly getting that job in August of would have been 97.
90.
No, 96. 96.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No,
but that was the first time that I had ever gotten a taste of being in a firehouse, and living in the firehouse and seeing their jobs and running their calls. And Collierville was an ALS engine firehouse, so they all had paramedics on the fire trucks and so forth. So that was the first time, that I had a taste and thinking, okay, this is something that I want to do. And so, I was 26 because I worked there a year until the following summer when I was of 97, and that's when I went to Texas.
So what did it for you? Was it the station life?
It was just, I guess the whole thing of, I'll be honest. It was 24 on, 4 days off.
It's nice.
You're not digging ditches, and thank gosh there's people that want to do that and do it. But, and it was just, I don't know, the camaraderie and the kind of brotherhood and joking around and all those different things, and just, I don't know. This sounds kind of, I don't know, not. My mom always used to say, people like you, like me and you and Logan and everybody, most everybody, you have a servant's heart.
Yeah. Meaning
that you're just designed, it's ingrained in you to want to serve in some way, shape, or form, whether that's in people end up in, the military, or a fireman, or a policeman, or a nurse, or a paramedic, or whatever. And I guess maybe that was just kind of being in the firehouse and, being EMT and getting into that, lifestyle. It just kind of clicked. Because I hadn't even really thought about that, coming out of high school, and I went into the service and, those kinds of things. So it was just kind of I don't want to say I fell into it, but it was just kind of traveled around, and all of a sudden, bam, that's where it was. So.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool too. because that's kind of how I was when I started volunteering. I started volunteering when I was turned 18, and within 2 months, I was like, I got to do this for a job.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it took me a long time to get to
Right.
do it as a job, but
Well, I mean, it's not easy. I mean, I say it's easier here for smaller departments and so forth. You know?
Yeah.
But there are guys that, you know, in bigger cities and places that wait a decade.
oh yeah,
You know, to try to get hired, you know, places like FDNY and LA and places like that. So, so when I went to Texas, I was living with a couple buddies that I had known from the Navy, and I just needed a change of scenery is why I went. And so when I got down there and I kind of realized, okay, you know, I made a mistake. What was I doing? You know, and then I came across the fire academy. And down there, much like it is in Florida, you know, if you want a fire job, you have to go out, you have to pay, you have to put yourself through fire school, you know, and get certified.
you had to do that there.
Yes.
Oh,
like
wow.
it's the same in the state of Florida. Like my cousins are cops, and it's the same thing. I don't know if it's changed, but like bigger cities like you know Austin or Houston or Dallas or like Orlando in Florida, whatever, they'll hire you off the street with no experience and put you through their academy. But if you want to work for a smaller city like here, like Madisonville or Henderson or places like that, or the departments outside of Austin or Daytona or in Florida, you have to certify yourself. Like you have to put in the time. So, so we started, and it was in Taylor, Texas, and that was like the department that the Austin Community College partnered with. And so we went out there, and it was like 458 hours of training, and it was just in Texas thank gosh it wasn't in the summer. I mean, it was in the spring, and it was hot enough, but. And Texas was one of the first states, because this was in '98, was one of the first states to like recognize and start promoting, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, IFSAC. Because when I graduated from the fire academy, I had IFSAC SEAL and IFSAC certifications and so forth, which like Florida didn't even recognize at the time and so forth.
Wow.
And but right when I graduated, or maybe even before I graduated, but right at the tail end of the academy, Collierville was hiring. And the guys were like, you should come back and test. So I flew back to Memphis and tested with them. And their agility test was crazy. Is it the Kaiser sled? What is the thing where you stand over it when you like for the CPAT, and you take the hammer and you smack it.
Yeah, I think it's the.
Theirs wasn't official. It was 3 railroad ties on a piece of plywood.
Oh,
and you
gosh.
stood there and you had to beat this end of this railroad tie a certain. When I got done with that, it was so funny. I couldn't grip anything, and then you had to climb the ladder of the 1951 ladder truck. I couldn't grip, so I was going up the ladder like using the rungs like this. Like I could not. It was crazy. And so I got done. I made it all the way through, and I got done, and I went up and was getting changed and going over my scores, and I was like, man, I was upset because I thought I didn't do well, and they were like, well, you're only one of 10 that passed or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, but I didn't get the call. They had hired 3 other people, so I went back to Texas. Well, I didn't know that right then, but I went back to Texas, and in Texas. Outside of Austin, in Travis County, there's Travis County Fire Control, which is a department, and then there's Lago Vista and Oak Hill and all these different, and a lot of those places will hire you to work, and I was working like 1 day a week, like every Thursday I'd work at Lago Vista. And it was sometime in middle August. I can't remember what day it was. I had just started this very first day at the job at Oak Hill. I had just got my T-shirts, and they gave me gear, whatever, and my sister called me. And, of course, this was all before cell phones, and, it's so easy to text and get in touch with somebody. And my sister at the time was working at Bath & Body Works in Memphis. And she said, Mark King, who is kind of like the assistant chief logistics person, whatever, for the fire department, she said, he's called, and he's trying to get in touch with you. You need to call. And I said, okay. So I hung up and I called the fire department, and the secretary who knew me. I knew everybody. They knew me. And she's like, oh, the chief wants to talk to you. And so the chief gets on the phone, Dennis Rutledge, who I'm still friends with today. On Facebook, I still talk with him.
Yeah.
He got on the phone and talked to me like he was my next door neighbor my entire life. He wasn't like he was mean to me beforehand, but he just, hey, Greg, how's it going? So good to hear from you, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, we had to let one of the guys go that we hired, and you're next on the list. Do you want a job? And I was like, yes, of course. And he goes, well, when can you be here? And I'm like, well, I get off work at 5, and it's a 12-and-a-half-hour drive back to,
Yeah.
So long story short, my very first day was September 1st of 98. And I just can't, it's hard to describe the feeling if you've never had it, as being of the very first run that we got and sitting in the back of the fire truck and riding down the road with the window down and thinking, this is really happening.
Yeah. It's a dream come true.
Yeah. I mean, so many guys, for lack of an analogy, knock on the door forever, and it takes forever, or some people don't get it or whatever, but, it gets opened for you and you get invited behind if that is kind of a...
Oh, absolutely.
But a funny story was my very first... Collierville is a very big bedroom community, like just nothing but subdivisions and some shopping malls. There's some industrial to it, but it's just a suburb of Memphis. And, the very first, I can't remember his last name. He was my lieutenant. And he was like, okay, you got to grab the EMT bags, the EMS bags and all these different things. So when this truck stops, you get off the truck and you go back and you grab that stuff and whatever. And I'm like, I'm on it. I'm there.
Yeah.
And one of the very first runs that we made was like right around the corner from the firehouse. And the truck stops and I jump off and shut the door and it drove away because they had stopped at the wrong house. And they only went like 5 houses down, but I was like, what the hell, and then they started giving me shit about it. And I'm like, you said when this truck stops, get off. And he knew that he was like, yeah, okay, no, I said that, but I'll never forget that.
Just running behind it, I can just see you.
Right. It was like, what, and thankfully he didn't like drive down around the corner or whatever, but I'm running after the fire truck. But yeah, that was one of the funny stories but.
So you've been to Austin, you've been to Collierville. How long was you there?
So I started at Collierville in September of 98, and then I got married in 2000. And right away we had our son, one son. We had 2 kids basically by around 2003 rather. And we didn't want to, my ex-wife now, Christy, her family's from here, from Greenville.
Okay.
And we had come up here a couple times and for holidays and so forth. And it just came to the point we just kind of started thinking Memphis wasn't a place that we wanted to raise kids. We didn't, it wasn't maybe the place that we wanted to be. And so we bought a house. Funny thing was we bought it from Tony Armour.
Okay.
And in Greenville. And so we owned the house for about 2 years. And then my wife is a nurse. She's a doctor now, but she was a nurse then. And she found a job up here in August of 2004. And so we moved here in August of 2004. And I drove back and forth to work. So I would drive in on the night before my shift. And sometimes I would sleep at the firehouse because the station had 8 beds.
Yeah. And
sometimes I'd stay with my mom. And I did that for a couple months. And then there was a guy, somebody that, like a friend of a friend, that's when everything was going on in Iraq and all of that stuff. And, and I can't remember specifically, but I got in touch with and got hooked up with somebody that was home, but was working over there as a firefighter and, started to think about, okay, so you can go over and you can make this much money and, and I, it's like, how long can I drive back and forth? 4 hours from Greenville to Memphis. Mm-hmm. And so I just, made the decision. I applied, got hired, and I left in January of 2005. was my last day. I think January 2nd was my last day in Collierville, and then I left on the 15th to fly to Houston, and then you do an intake, and then they fly you to. We flew to Kuwait, and then you took another plane and flew to Baghdad, and that's where you in-processed for the fire department.
And you had no ties to military, or?
No, it was no. So how it worked over there was, of course, when the war started or whatever, they opened these bases, and all the bases were manned by military, whether it be Army or Air Force or so forth. And of course, they have firemen. So they had, they would have firemen that come in. And what would happen is as things were winding down a little bit, they were sending these guys home. And as they would I'm trying to think, like Fallujah, let's just say, that base there, they would send the Army guys, the Army firefighter, Air Force firefighters, whatever, home, and then they would bring in a contingent of, the company I worked for was called Wackenhut, which was a subsidiary of Halliburton, and which was a big contract, and so they would bring in a contingent of WSI firefighters, and they would work alongside the military ones, and then the military guys would go home, and then the Wackenhut would be the fire department. And so that's kind of how that works. So you really didn't have to have any military service.
Wow. So how do you even go about finding? I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh yeah, I have people that still work over there. You can contract to go work as a firefighter on bases around the world.
Wow.
Yeah, even today. So we all flew in. You do this big intake. I remember living in this tent with it was, I won't say it's about half the size of this room, and I had to have been, 15 of us living in it for, a week or two. And then you kind of get assigned, hey, we need 2 people here, and you get on your plane and go. And so I ended up at a base, which was, there's a little part of Iraq that touches the Persian Gulf. It's not very big. And there's a port there, Port Qasr. And there was an army base there, and they called it Camp Bucca, Bucca. And it was named after Ron Bucca, which was only one of 2 New York City fire marshals that died in 9/11.
Oh, wow.
And they called him the Flying Fireman because he, some point in his career, fell from a 5-story walk up, but about 2 stories from the ground, the story goes, his air pack caught a guide wire and it spun him around, and then he hit the ground. So he didn't, the impact was very lessened.
Yeah, wow.
So we show up at this base. It was me. I think there was 5 or 6 or 7 of us and the chief, and they didn't ever have a fire department. So when we showed up, we had a brand new Pierce fire truck, a brand new E1 tanker, and these 2 Hyundai cab over engine, foreign fire trucks that had a pump and water. You could say it maybe was more of a brush truck, and it's funny because we were like rock stars, because we showed up and everybody was like, who are they? And,
cool.
Nobody knew who we were, and, and everybody wanted to, oh my gosh, we got firemen here now. And so we had a tent as our firehouse, and we had a tent where we lived. It was 2 tents, I think, where we lived. And, but Camp Bucca was a huge prison base. There was a huge prison on the base. And what's funny is that I didn't know this. I think this is correct. Canvas tents, what makes them waterproof is diesel or something like that.
Oh, wow.
I don't quote me on that, but
Yeah.
something about it that makes the canvas or whatever, because the prisoners used to set them on fire and be like, hey, we got a fire on the TIF, and we'd run out to the fire truck, or run to the fire truck, and they'd just poof.
Done.
We'd get there and there would be nothing there. But I do remember this. When we first got there, within a week or two, in January, we got there in February. In January, there had been this big riot, and I don't know if a couple people died, and it was a big news kind of story at the time. And so we had to go out to the base got to the jail. TIF is what they called it, TIF, and they put these like dummies, like, you know, on the fence, and they flew in this 2-star general, and he wanted to see what would happen if we used the fire hose to knock people off the fence.
Oh, wow.
That's
good.
So we had to go out there, and we're all, pulling, we got a 2.5 smooth bore, and we're, blowing all these people, well, not people, but, these dummies off the fence, or like they're standing at the fence and, blowing them. And it was like he wanted to know how that would be, like to subdue, kind of thing. I know that's probably not politically correct now, but. But it was interesting. I'll never forget that. And then there was one time there was a riot on the, like basically, it's hard to explain without showing you a drawing, but there was like a big, the jail, the TIF was like this big square. It was all fenced in. But inside that were like these little squares where the prisoners were, that you could go drive around and so forth. And all around one side was they had like offices and the hospital and so forth. And so, you could go in, but, onto the compound. And they had a riot, and we went out there. We weren't supposed to go on but they waved us in, and then we got stuck on it, and they were flinging chunks of concrete, and it was a really, really weird situation to be a part of. And then they brought in this Black Hawk helicopter and just like set it down almost on the ground over the TIF where it was happening. It just blew everything against the fence, and then they stopped rioting. It was interesting.
You didn't get to gun them down?
No, we didn't have to hose anybody off we always wanted to, though. We always were like, man, that would be, but it's not like you want to hurt somebody, but I mean, if it's going to help, yeah,
if
sure.
you're throwing concrete at me.
Right, exactly. So, but yeah, so I was there. It was funny because it was like, at the time I was married and had 2 kids, and where we were, there wasn't really a fence around the base. Like up in Baghdad and everything north of there was like walls and everything. Ours was just like barbed wire, because I guess in the southern part of Iraq, it's where the people were happy that we were there, I guess, or something. But I would think, why am I here? What am I doing here? And then I'd get paid.
Yeah,
and it was
did
like
it pay pretty good?
$5,200 every 2 weeks.
Oh wow, yeah, it pays really good.
All right, that's why I'm here. Because something about, I can't remember the rules, but it was like if you were out of the country for so many months or something, the first $80,000 that you make is not taxed, or I don't know. It was some weird.
Oh, wow.
So I think I spent 9 or 10 months there. I didn't actually, honestly, I didn't fulfill the contract. I should have been there a year, and I just got to the point where I was like, I just can't. I didn't, it was just, I don't know, the stress of being away from my kids and so forth.
Especially a year. That's a really long contract.
I mean, you got every so many months, you got like 2 weeks off. Like I came back in, I think in April. I had left in January, so it was sometime early April. And at the time, I met my wife and kids, and I think my mom was there. We went to Disney and camped. We had a camper and so forth. So you went home. Like, it wasn't you were gone for the whole year. And so when I came home, we were living in Greenville, and I was just a stay-at-home dad and thinking, I completely screwed up, I was behind the door, and now I'm not. And am I ever going to get back on the other side?
Yeah.
And so I just was like applying for, at the time, they still are out there. There's a website, firecareers.com, and you join it and you pay like $10 a month or whatever, and it lists like almost every fire job that's active. Some of them just, hey, we're just taking applications, and some of them, hey, we have a date, whatever. And I was just like, I had packets, with all of my, I'm a little OCD, so like, my resume and all my high school diploma and all these different things. So I'd apply for a job, I just grab a packet, stick it in there, had all my certifications, all that other stuff. And it applied everywhere, like in South Carolina, Florida, and one of them was Franklin, Tennessee. And I had, so I came home in 2005, And I got hired at the ambulance service here in January of 06, working just PRN. And,
Did you stay here?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
cool.
I worked here and then with the ambulance service. And then so it was about a year that I didn't have a job. And then it was September of 06 is when I got a job offer from Franklin.
Yeah.
I had actually had a test date for Hopkinsville, and I skipped it because I got the job.
Yeah.
And so I got hired in Franklin. And I had already had all my Tennessee certifications and everything, but they're like, well, you've got to go through our fire academy. I'm like, I don't care. I was like, I'm just happy to get a badge and, a pair of boots again.
Let me back in this door.
Right, exactly. Step behind the door. I don't care, So I went through the fire academy, and I think there was like 6 or 7 of us that went through. But I didn't have to take any of the tests because I already had Tennessee State Fire 1 and 2. Because at the time, I don't think Tennessee did IFSAC at the time. I'm not sure. They were, but I still had like Tennessee Firefighter 1 and 2 and so forth from my first job. So I just did that and graduated, and and at the time Franklin was just starting their ALS protocols to run like rescue trucks, like an E450 4-door in a big box. And at the time they had rescue stuff, like they had acetylene torches on the truck and like for cutting stuff up and so forth. So, and a funny story, one time I was riding with a guy named Steve Denny who went through the academy with me. He was a really good guy. He was a paramedic, and we were riding on the rescue truck, and you ran mostly all the medical calls. And it was on Station 2, which is on Highway 96, which you ever go down to Franklin, like 96 crosses over 65 and so forth. And so the station's sitting here, and you pull out and to the right, just, I don't know, a quarter of a mile down, there's a big intersection, stoplight, whatever. But right before it on the left was an old folks home. And at the time, I don't know how they work specifically, but Franklin had the Opticon. So you know what that Opticon is a thing that's mounted in the truck that when the lights are on, it activates and it trips the stoplights to be green.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never seen one.
So it'll trip the stoplight as you're coming up to it, and it'll make it all red, so it's green the way that you're going.
Yeah.
And so we make a call across the street to the old folks' place, and when we pull in, the way the truck was positioned, it was within reach of the Opticon at the stoplight at the intersection. And we got a phone call like 6 or 7 minutes into the call, and they're like, hey, you need to go out and shut the lights off on the truck because you tripped the light here and it's been red for 3 different directions for the last like 8 minutes. And they were like, oh shit. But it was interesting because Franklin was a good department. I don't know if I ever really, either I didn't work there long enough or I didn't really like necessarily feel at home, if that makes a sense. Mm-hmm. And then Madisonville happened. They were hiring, and Steve Stoltz, I don't know if you've ever heard it. Steve was the chief when I got hired, and he had been promoted from, I think, a lieutenant's position. And he wasn't necessarily old school. Like he was very, like it made a lot of the older guys upset that he got, And so they're hiring like 7 guys. And I went, and my wife was pregnant with our 3rd son at the time. And I had I had to go test for the department for Madisonville, and it was on a day that I was supposed to work in Franklin. And I told Christy, I'm like, you're just going to have to say that, we're going to have to go to the hospital this morning. You're going to have to say that you're having contractions because I'm going to need a reason and a doctor's note that I didn't go to work today because I don't know if I had a lot of sick time. And so we go to the doctor, we go to the hospital, and she checks in and whatever, and they're like, oh, you're in labor. You're like 5 centimeters dilated. She was like, you're going to take the test anyway. Yeah. Because, it was a big deal. Player, baby. Because, for the whole year and a half that I worked in Franklin, I drove back and forth from here to
wow.
Franklin, and their shift started at 6 a.m.
Gosh.
Which sucked for going to work, but when you got off work at 6 a.m. in Nashville, going north on 65 was great because you didn't hit any traffic.
Yeah.
But the very first shift I worked in Franklin, I left. I was cruising down 181, and I thought, oh, I forgot my phone. And I stopped, turned around, and came back, and I was like not even a mile from turning around and hit a deer.
Oh.
And then realized that my phone was in the car. But so I tested in Madisonville, and then I went and took the agility test and passed, and and then the chief called me one day. I was working in Franklin, and I don't know, I was taking a nap because he woke me up. The phone call woke me up, and chief was like, "Hey, we're gonna hire, 8 people, and I want to hire you, but I've got somebody in the group that doesn't have a job right now, and he's got a family, and I really want to get him in first." And I was like, I'm what am I going to say? No.
Yeah, what are you going to say?
And I'm like, cool, hey, if you're, he's like, because we've got some people retiring coming up and so forth. And I was like, great, not a problem. And so I called my wife at the time, and she was like, oh, that's, she was pissed. Like, what happens if something changes and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Tell them no?
Yeah, no, that's not going to work, sir.
So they got hired in October. That group of people got hired in October of 2007. And then they called me and they're like, hey, we got a grant. Before they even gave me a job offer, we got a grant for gear. We want you to come in December and get fitted for gear. And we're having a hazmat tech class. We want you to come in and be a part of that. Before I even had a job offer.
Yeah.
And then I got hired January 26th of 2008. So, and then it was, we got hired January 26th. And I was brand new, and then what happened in February of 2008 with the tornado.
Oh yeah.
And of course, I was really good friends.
I forgot about that. I totally when you said that, I was like, I don't know, but I totally forgot.
I was really good friends with Keith Putnam, and he was on Greenville, and that's when I started my EMA stuff, because he brought me in, and I was chief operations we were at the county arena there, and but I was off for 4 days, and then I have to go back to work. He's like, you can't go back to work. I need you here. And I'm like, I can't call in sick.
Yeah.
It's like my third shift.
Yeah.
Like, what am I gonna? And so he called the fire chief, and they worked it out. But guys would always gave me crap about that. Just joked about it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I started in 2008, and Madisonville was just a really good fit. It was a great place to work. I really enjoyed it. And for years, probably a year and a half, 2 years, I rode out of rank as a lieutenant here and there, and then got promoted and so forth.
So when did you get promoted?
Oh gosh.
I mean, how long was you there before you were actually promoted? I know you said you rode out of rank, so.
I was probably there for 11 years.
Before you got promoted?
Well, I mean, I got promoted to engineer within 5 years.
Yeah.
And then I was an engineer. And, of course, in Madisonville, I mean, the day that you promote to engineer, you might have to ride out of rank as a lieutenant. Like, it's happened quite a bit. And so, I was an engineer for a while. And interesting thing is that, and we talked about this downstairs, that I ended up as a out-of-rank lieutenant with Jared Sutherland and Lee Williams as my firefighter when he first came on. It was a Muhlenberg connection. We had a great time. It was a great crew. But anyway, I know you got questions.
No, I mean, it's been good. No, the only thing I would really ask about that is what kind of officer did you try to be?
I've always had the idea that, the mindset that, if somebody always tells me, oh yeah, I know it all, or that they don't.
Yeah.
Like you can, I don't care who you are, you can come to work every day as a battalion chief or a firefighter or anywhere in between and learn something.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if it's something small or something like that. And I don't say this because I certainly don't think I'm better than anybody else because of where I've worked and so forth. But I will say that having worked and even in Iraq, if you count that as a department in quotes, I've had the experience to see how different departments operate.
Yeah.
And work for many different lieutenants and battalion chiefs and see what works, what doesn't work, seeing their tactics and so forth. One of the lieutenants that really, I'm still friends with him today, a guy named Tim Rice. And I worked with him in Collierville for many years. He was a paramedic, really great guy. And he was very, very much into like taking fire classes at the fire academy and, the National Fire Academy and so forth. And lieutenant, I tried to be one of the bigger things I always tried to instill with the guys that worked for me is that to make sure that they knew that I had their back. I hated to see guys that everybody's going to screw up at something, whether you pull out and you catch the tail end of the truck on the side of the station, or you back over a wheel chalk, or something's going to take you to the chief's office. And I always wanted to make sure that the guys knew that even if it's your screw up and there's no explanation for it, I'm not going to let you hang out there to dry by yourself. I'll be there with you.
Yeah, I'll jump in the pool with you.
I will advocate for you in different ways and shape and form and so forth. But because I think if those guys feel secure in a way, not that, I can screw up and whatever, but that if something happens. And the other thing I always used to tell, in fact, I tell the new guys in Greenville and so forth today, I'm like, if we're somewhere on a scene or something and I ask you for something or to do something and you don't know, or you don't fully understand, tell me right then.
Yep.
I'm not going to think less of you because not everybody is going to know or remember every aspect of everything on how to do everything for this job.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe some people know more than some and, or retain it or whatever. But because I want to know, because if you don't understand it, then we'll take care of it. And then when we get back to the station, then we can talk about it and so forth. Another thing that I always tried to do, when we were, like they say, station train and whatever, I was always used to go to the guys and I'm like, I don't care how simple it is. If there's something that you don't feel comfortable with, then let's train on it. Yeah. If it's full, if you're not comfortable with doing a triple layer load on the fire truck, or the thing about it is taking away the shame of, I should know this, but I don't want to tell anybody because they're going to think less of me. Yeah. This is not the type of job. I mean, that is the mindset a lot of places.
Oh yeah, it is, and it's
but
terrible.
This is not the type of job to have that, because people's lives depend on that.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand the simplest thing, then just tell me. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to think less of you, because I was there before too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a lieutenant that did this for me, and it made me feel comfortable in knowing that, okay, I may not know everything, and if I don't know something, I can feel comfortable enough to say, I don't understand what you're asking me to do, and be like, okay, bam, we're on a scene, I'll get him to do it, or you go with him and do this, and we get back to the station, all right, let's sit down, and, we always try to critique a call, even if it was just over dinner or sit in the recliners. It didn't have to be a big, whiteboard drawing kind of thing, but hey, we ran this call, and what'd you guys think? And to tell them, like, hey, listen, when we're on a medical call and that I'm asking these questions, then I need you to be thinking, okay, this is how this call's going, as far as EMT wise. Like, if I'm asking questions about blah, blah, blah. It was the same way with my lieutenant, Tim Rice. He was a paramedic. I knew enough to know that if he would be asking questions and I would know exactly what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like, if he started asking this set of questions, then I knew I was going to do this set of like get the heart monitor out, get a blood. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Crew continuity was very important.
It should run like a fine old machine.
Yeah,
Absolutely. You shouldn't even have to ask me.
that's exactly
that's the
right.
way I see it.
And that's okay if you have to, because sometimes things go in a different direction. But it's,
Yeah.
But you may ask this, but probably one of the more memorable calls that Jared Sutherland was on, so I don't know if he talked about it, because I didn't listen to his whole podcast, but was the fireworks tent. Did he tell you about that?
I think so.
We were working at Station 2, night of 4th of July or whatever it was. And it was me and Wade Simons, who was shift commander in Madisonville. Great guy, worked for him for years, very, very knowledgeable gentleman. And we're at Station 2, and I don't know, it was like 1 or 2 in the morning. We were dead asleep. And bam, tones drop, blah, blah, blah. Fireworks tent on fire. And we're all collectively like, oh,
This is bad.
we're like, oh, damn, and we get up, and then we open the door to the bed hall, and you can hear the fireworks going off, because it was like right down the street.
Yeah.
If you know where Station 2 is on McLaughlin, and it was right at Main Street in McLaughlin, like, and Princeton Pike, right there. And we get up there, we pull up, and so the stations the fireworks tents to the left, and we're facing west, and so the pump panel's on the side, and I'm like getting beamed with fireworks, and Jared's on, and he was like, get the deck gun, and Jared's on the top of the truck, just and it was just, that was one of the craziest calls.
Dip, duck, dive, dodge.
Right, and then so we get done with that, and we get it out, and everything's, and we're wrapping it up, and we were going to go across the street behind the Walgreens to fill the tank up, and we weren't even in the parking lot. Tones drop, another fireworks tent down by Marketplace on fire, but it didn't have any fireworks in it. Supposedly, there's a rule that if there's fireworks in the tent, there has to be somebody on site 24 hours a day.
Yeah, you got to sleep with it.
Yeah.
That's why when they set them up here, they're in campers and everything.
Yeah, they're
right
in a
there with
pop-up camper next to it, whatever. So, but yeah, that have to be one of the, and we talked about this in messages and so forth. I think that, and this sounds, I don't know, not self-serving, but I always considered it very important that here you are, as an EMT or paramedic, or if you're that you're trained to make a difference in somebody's life.
Yeah.
And it's a fairly powerful thing, in my opinion, because it's not walking on water and being self-serving to say that there are some people that are here today that, because I was a part of a team, it wasn't just me, but part of a team that had an intervention. We had to run, another memorable run in that genre was, we were out, I was driving the ladder truck, John Dunning, who used to be the chief, he was the captain at the time, and we had 2 new guys and the training officer, and we were out running, doing driver's training. And we were up off the exit, Lowe's exit on the Parkway, and we got a call for a lady having a heart attack, chest pain, and she was parked on the side of the Parkway. And she wasn't really sure where she was at. So Dunning was like, come on, let's go. We're right here. So we got on the Parkway at the Lowe's exit, headed south, and didn't come across her before we got to the next exit. And he said, well, hop off the exit. Let's see if she's on the off-ramp. Went down the off-ramp. He was like, doesn't see her. He's like, just get back on and go. Because not too far beyond that exit is the train bridge, and that's where Madisonville technically, their stops. So he was like, keep going. So we went down, went past the next exit, and got almost all the way to the next exit, which was several miles, at least a mile or 2, and came across her. She was on the side of the road. She had like 5 nitros. She was sitting in her car, having chest pain. So we're crawling to the car, I'm kneeling in the passenger seat, trying to get a blood pressure. And she's, oh, yeah, I just want more nitro. I'm like, no, you can't have more nitro.
You don't need any.
You're not going to have a blood pressure to begin with.
Yeah.
And then she had a seizure, and she was gone.
Wow. So
we jumped out, and I say, I mean, this wasn't just me. I mean, this was a concerted effort of several people.
Yeah.
So I'm not the only one that did this, but we pulled her out behind the car, opened her shirt, got the pads on her. I can't remember if we started CPR and then it didn't advise shock. We did more CPR, and we did shock her because the ambulance got there soon after that, and she had a heart rate, she had a heartbeat. And then when we were moving around and got her on the stretcher and got her in the back of the ambulance, she coded again. But so they shocked her again, and then they could give her epiatropine and the other cardiac drugs. And we went down and turned around in the median and went down up north and got off at the Lowe's exit to go to the hospital. And when we got off the exit, she was talking to us, saying that her back hurt.
Oh, wow.
And I can't tell you why, but I almost cried. I don't know why, because it was so emotional. And it was like, and it was Widowmaker.
Oh, wow.
Which, that's not...
You don't play with it.
No, not at all. I mean, that's very kind of rare. I mean, I'm not saying we were just, but she was like saying her back hurt because we had been doing CPR on her in the gravel on the side of the road.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure she was sore.
So, yeah. So that was and then it was interesting because I guess I can say all this. Well, A, I don't work in Madisonville anymore, and B, I'm not saying who it is, but we were out at a business, I won't say where she worked, doing a walkthrough, and she walked by, and the lady that was giving us the tour, her husband worked for Madisonville, so we knew her. And I said, man, why does that lady look familiar? And she's like, oh, that's, so-and-so. That's the lady that, you guys saved on the side of the road. And I'm like, really? And like, yeah, she's going out for a smoke break.
Oh, man.
And I was just like, all right,
Whatever.
Everything's a choice.
Yeah.
But that was some of the memorable calls that, of course there were probably more, but I could sit here all day and talk about stuff.
Yeah.
But
I get getting emotional over that, though. And I think a lot of it, like you said, is a lot of times we fight death all the time. And most of the time we lose,
that's true.
So when you win, it's a big thing,
Yeah, it's and we talked about this before. I can't say obviously. Well, it'll be 31 years this May, this month or next month since I graduated EMT school. But I can't say how everybody. Okay, so a question that everybody asks is, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with death? How do you deal with seeing those things and so forth? And for me personally, like I can't sit and watch a show like about a certain, like on TLC or whatever, that's death and mayhem and whatever. I can't. But when you give me a call and we're going out and the person's got a amputated leg, it doesn't register with me. Like that's not the focus. The focus is okay, we got to get tourniqueted, we got to do this, we got to do that. You're in a mindset. Now later on you might think, ooh, that was
that's wild. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
But I can't say. I will tell you that. One call just very recently, even it's after I retired. We had I think he was 6 months old baby, and it wasn't even in our district, in Greenville's district. And somebody had rolled over on him in his sleep, and he suffocated him.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know that for sure. I probably shouldn't say that, but when we got to the house, I was on the ambulance working, and they hand you a lifeless baby.
Yeah,
that's just
always the
that
worst.
really, 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 really affected me for a little while. I can't, because we of course didn't get him back. We did CPR all the way to the hospital.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't say I don't have an answer for that, a really definitive answer of how you deal with that. I guess it's just, I think you deal with it through talking about it with people that understand. You know, for years when I was married, my wife was a nurse, and so she kind of understood. But that's when, honestly, a lot of and people don't understand unless you're a part of it. The therapy sessions that you have around your table downstairs.
That's the truth,
or
right there.
any kitchen table, or any set of chairs, in the back of the bay or whatever. For one of the biggest things in Collierville we used to do is we would sit out in front of the station like every night, almost every shift when it was warm, and whatever. And now you just sat there and talked, and sometimes you talk about how bad that was or blah, 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 whatever. I don't know. I mean, I think that's just, but that being said, I think that, PTSD is real, but CISD and having those kinds of meetings and bringing people in is super important. Because when I started, maybe it's less now than it was then, but there was a mindset of, brush it off. You're, big 6'6", 300-pound fireman. You shouldn't cry. You shouldn't do this. Just brush it off and go, and so forth. And I'm very happy that that's not the case. And the biggest thing is instilling that in the young people that come in now to the service, and have them make sure that they understand that it's okay to get emotional about something. It's okay to get upset about something. Pete, you can't see those kinds of things and not have it affect you in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so whether it's having an official meeting and bringing somebody in, we just did recently, because we had that. I did for a couple of the guys. We had that fatality fire on 181. And there's and if you guys ever need that, I've got a number.
Yeah,
there's a really great group of guys from Hopkinsville.
Awesome.
If you guys ever need it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
But I think it's just passing along to the younger generation the idea that it's okay. It's not a big, it's okay to be, let somebody know that affected you, because you don't want the alternative, so.
Yeah, and the alternative is bad. No matter, even if it's not suicide, because that's worst case scenario. I mean, the first time I ever knew something was going on was my kid was crying. My wife was, I don't know, I hate to say grouching, but it was some normal day-to-day married stuff, and I just lost my mind on the whole house. It was crazy for like 2 seconds, and then after I had the big explosion, I'm like, what is wrong with me? I knew something was up then.
Yeah.
And like you said, but the best therapy, and this is my personal opinion, I love what Jared Sutherland said in his episode about, because I was telling him, I tried therapy, and I did. It wasn't for me. Talking to somebody, a stranger that I didn't know, or about seeing dead kids and stuff, what's he going to tell me? And that's the way I looked at it personally. But he looks at it a totally different way, which I totally respect and agree with. He said, yeah, I've never had a heart attack, but I know how to treat one.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that's true. And it's kind of funny, because I agree with Jared, and because I respect the heck out of him.
Me too.
But I see your point. I mean, the other side of that is that, okay, so I'm going to take marriage advice from somebody that's never been married.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like you can study marriage all you want, but until you have 2 screaming kids, as an example, so that's where, like the CISD, I happen to know somebody he's my son's social worker, and he hooked me up with somebody from Hopkinsville Fire.
Yeah.
And they they have classes and so forth. And so, yes, to sit down with a therapist that's got a sign out down here on the corner, talk to them about having to pick up a dead kid and do CPR on the way to the hospital. They can study all that and answer it, but they're not going to know. But on the flip side of that, to talk with a fireman that's done this for 25 years, that's dealt with those things, that can say, hey, I've dealt with similar things and this is how I handle it. One of those might work for you. That's different. It's all about, I think, but again, it's kind of a three-pronged thing, because I also agree with just sitting and talking with the people that you work with.
Yeah.
And being comfortable enough to say, hey, listen, that really, being comfortable enough to say that.
Yeah.
And like I said, it starts with the younger generation. It's almost like raising kids in a way. I'm 56, so everybody's a kid to me. But making sure that they understand that.
Yeah.
That hey, it's okay to say, man, that was a really bad call.
Yeah, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because, yeah, you're right. It's not suicide. More times than not, it's failed marriages, because, not everybody. I mean, that's why a lot of policemen and firemen are married to nurses, and just, because it's like you congregate and you understand that, and sometimes that doesn't last. Sometimes that is better because, like, hey, I understand, I dealt with it in the hospital and not on the pre-hospital. So,
yeah.
But
I think it really just depends on what you need as a person. Whether, if you like the therapy thing,
yes,
do it. If you like talking to the older guy that's been there and give you ideas to help, do it. If you like sitting around just talking with people you work with, do it. But you got to do something, or it will eat you alive.
100%. I mean, and even, and I think too, the tough thing is even on the volunteer side, it gets fallen because, volunteer, like, and I don't agree with this, but, a lot of people are like, oh, they're not professionals. To me, I disagree with that.
Yeah, me too.
Because I've seen volunteers that are way more professional than some paid firemen.
Me too.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And so I think as a volunteer, it even gets swept under the rug more because you don't have that station time a lot. Like, you're not in a house for 24 hours. Like, they'll come in, they'll run a call, it's really crappy, and then they'll go back home. And so it's even more so you have to be mindful about that.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because we go, like you said, see a dead child or something. We can come back here and talk about it. Those guys come back here and then go back to work at Best Buy the next morning around people who have no idea they just held a dead kid.
Have you seen the movie Code 3?
Oh, I love it.
Okay.
I've never seen it more accurate.
That's 152%. And I was watching it with some friends it's amusing and you will get it. Now, some people are like, how is that funny? But I was watching it with some friends that aren't, first responders. They're just, I'm like, you got to watch it because then you'll understand. And then they're they're watching the movie, and most accurate depiction of being a paramedic, EMS. And they're like, okay, so like you deal with a dead person and then you got to go back out and make more runs? Like, you don't get to go home? I'm like, yeah. I mean, like, no, seriously, you like run up and, you got dead people in a car and then you've got to, I'm like, all the time.
Yeah, that's a Tuesday.
It was so funny to me that people are so, I didn't know that happened. I'm like, how many paramedics do you think, if they sent EMTs and paramedic and firemen home every time they ran into a dead body, how many people would you have to have on the firehouse?
Yeah. Oh gosh.
But yeah, that was a funny thing. But
I'm glad you said that, because it's funny you said, you were like, you got to watch this, because my sister, one run this. As soon as I watched it, I was like, this is exactly what it's like.
Yes.
You have got to watch it.
Yes.
Everybody.
There's too many, Nashville 911 shows and so forth. Everybody's like, oh, do you watch that? I'm like, no.
No, they're...
Because I'm like, until they have a shift where they run 10 calls and 6 of them are lift assists for picking Granny out of the bathtub when she's naked, that's not an accurate depiction of what a firehouse is.
Right. Always covered in poop.
And always naked. Why does everybody always have to be naked?
Yeah, every single time. You're trying to like give them a little bit of dignity and like hold.
And they're like, and I'm like, yeah, it's not the first time I ever said, come on, let's go.
Yes.
Let's just come on,
yeah,
let's,
there.
But, and I know you touched about this, so I'll bring it up. I've always stood by the thing that being a fire for this. I don't think this applies to everybody because some guys, especially nowadays, but being a fireman is not what you do; it's who you are.
Yeah.
Because you can't do this job, to me, do it correctly, and not. It's just not who you are. I mean, part of it is, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a firefighter. And there's a certain respect to that, that, it's nice, and people, I mean, it's not why I do the job or did the job, but I just think it's a very interesting and, powerful statement because it's just part of who you are.
Yeah.
And that's why, like so many guys, you see guys that are working probably well past when they should retire, because they just don't want to give it up. Was it hard to retire? Yeah. I mean, had some shoulder issues and, I just, happened to be able to financially be like, you know what? Okay, I'm good, and like we talked about, I still get to be a part of it. I still, get to run calls and I ride on the fire truck. Of course I work in EMS again now, but it was funny because when I retired, I have a house in Nashville too. And every time I would go down there, I mean, I promise you, every time I left the house, I would see a fire truck going somewhere with lights and sirens on. And I'd be like, where are they going and what are they going to see?
Yeah.
And I want to be on that truck because it's kind of you're so trained to deal with problems. I mean, and I think one of the things that makes it difficult, like personally, like when you lose somebody, like my mom passed away 6 or 7 years ago, and it's hard to see somebody deal with issues like that and not be able to fix it because you spend your career running into somebody's worst day and saying, all right, let's clean this up. Let's do this, fix this. Let's do this. Boom. Put out the small fire in the kitchen, save their house. They're good to go, and then deal with things that you can't. That's it's another tough thing to deal with is things that you can't fix in your life like that. Like if somebody's, you have a family member that's, going to pass away or something like that.
And
it's not
especially
easy
when you know it and everybody else is, I hate to say it, I don't want to say we're hopeless, but I can call it when I see it.
Oh yeah.
And everybody else is holding out hope, and I'm sitting there thinking, they're dead, they just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And I hate to sound so morbid about that, but
when they're talking to the passed away family
yes,
members.
exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, it was just it's just something that doesn't leave you. I don't, as being a firefighter, it's always going to be, even when you're retired, be like, what'd you do for work? I was a firefighter. Or what do you do for work? And be like, I'm retired, but I was, it's just part of who you are.
Yeah.
But that's not, I don't think everybody feels that way. People flow in and out of the service, come in, work for 4 or 5 years, and then leave and so forth. I don't think that they have that feeling. They don't have that. That's not something I think everybody, which is fine. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. But.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because I can't imagine doing anything else. If I was to.
It's the best job in the world.
Absolutely. If right now the city was to come over and say, you're done, you're out of here, I'm going somewhere.
Yep.
I'll be knocking on doors first thing in the morning.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I totally get it. It was not easy, It wasn't easy stepping away, but I mean, it's, in my opinion too, it's kind of a young man's job in a way.
Yeah.
Like, I have gear, and I tell the guys all the time in Greenville, I mean, like, I'll go into a house fire. I'm not afraid to do that.
Yeah.
But would I prefer not to? Like, I will pump the truck, change a bottle, get you water, go get you food, and be completely behind the scenes and do everything that needs to be done. But if, all hell breaks loose and it's just me and some dude on a truck and we pull up to a house and there's some, my kids in there, we're going.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I say that, I'll never forget the first house fire I went in. And I would never forget this, holding my hand up to my face. And I had to have been this close to my mask and not seeing my hand and thinking,
this ain't good.
Well, I mean, it was just, it's a good thing I'm not claustrophobic.
Yeah. The craziest part I thought for like my first house fire was all I'd had to compare it to was, like you said, backdraft, ladder 49, stuff like that. And these guys are going the hallway, and you'll see all the way to the end of it. It's a little hazy.
Right.
And then when first time I ever went in, I'm like, just thick black curtains, can't see nothing. And I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do anything in this place?
Right, exactly. I totally get it. It's just, and then every fire is different.
Oh yeah. Because I've had the thermal layer up where you can see pretty good.
Right, you can walk in. Well, which for me is a little tough because I'm taller than everybody else. But, 100%, but I don't know. It's just the best job. People don't understand it. And a lot of people are like, I can't do it, and I'm like, well, you know what? I can't be an accountant. I hate math.
Yeah, exactly. I get it. Different strokes for different folks.
Everybody's meant to do something. but anyway.
So I know you're still staying involved. So if you could look back at yourself right now, starting out, what would you tell yourself? Or any new young fireman that's wanting to get
I will tell you, this is advice that I just gave, Taylor Durow.
Oh, yeah. In Fire Academy? Is he Fire Academy?
Yeah, great kid.
Okay,
yeah, he's in Fire Academy. And he was up at the station the other day, and, we were talking, and I said, I told him, you need to go to EMT school. Mm-hmm. I said, if you want, I said, well, where would you want to work? And he's like, oh, it'd be great to, Madisonville or, Henderson or Bowling Green or Owensboro or whatever. And I'm like, all great departments. But I said, but you need to think bigger, do something big. Mm-hmm. Like me looking back, like if I could look back to, graduating from the fire academy and, be like, I was already an EMT, go to paramedic school, which I went to paramedic school. And I took the National Registry test 3 times, and I didn't pass it. And then I got frustrated and got pissed, and then didn't ever go back. Yeah. And I should have, because that would have changed the trajectory of my career. I might not even be sitting here with you right now, because having a paramedic license and a fire certification, it's not like you can go anywhere, but there are many doors that will open
close,
for you. Because I told Taylor, I was like, those are great places, and apply everywhere. Take the first job that hires you that you would be happy, obviously apply places you'd be happy working, and then go from EMT to paramedic school. And once you have that paramedic license, you could almost go anywhere. I'm like, go to Nashville, go to Gatlinburg, go to Panama City, go beach, go somewhere. Don't think, someplace that, man, it'd be great to live there. And you might only work there for 2 years and think, and then you apply somewhere else. Don't feel like you got to go somewhere. But I would say by the age of 30, make sure you're somewhere where you want to be.
Yeah.
I mean, over my career, I was a rookie 3 times when I was 28, 36, and 38. Yeah.
But I mean, you've done more than.
Being a rookie, when I got hired in Madisonville, it was a very delicate thing because you don't want to be the new guy that's like, oh, hey, that's not how we did it at my old department.
Yeah.
It was so very tape my mouth shut. Because I was like, nope, not going to say it. And they would ask. They were like, hey, how'd you do that? And I'd be like, well, but because you didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
But looking back, that's probably the biggest advice to my earlier self would have been, go back, study, and take that paramedic test.
Yeah.
And because that is a ticket that can write you to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And if you want to, you might not want to, or you might want to, Nashville or, fire. And that's like, I don't want to say it's not a real, here, Greenville or whatever, Madisonville, they're real fire departments, but it's just a bigger fish pond.
Yeah.
I guess. More advancement, more,
Yeah. The possibilities are a lot more.
Yeah. But the thing about it is too, and I told him, like, if you're happy to go to Greenville or Central or Madisonville, and that's your goal, and then that's what you should do.
Yeah.
But don't not do it because you think, oh, I can't, kind of thing.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
But yeah.
Well, Greg, man, I appreciate you coming on today.
Well, sure.
Is there anything else you want to say?
No. I mean, I think I've talked a lot here.
Yeah, no,
I didn't give you a lot of chance
Honestly,
to ask questions.
I had the whole list, and it's so funny. Like, you went in perfect order the entire time. Like, I would get ready to say something or to ask you something, and you would cover it right then.
But yeah, it's great, and it's great that you do this, because it's a great outlet for, people to listen to and, get an idea about what it's like. Because the biggest thing too, even in to this day and age, and it's across the country, is volunteer is just in the toilet. People wanting to volunteer. The interesting thing, I just read this the other day. I grew up in New York on Long Island, and none of the fire departments. Long Island is 2 counties, Nassau and Suffolk. Suffolk's the tail end of the county, and let's just say Suffolk County. The property taxes are astronomical. $500,000 house, you might pay $15,000 or $16,000 a year in property taxes.
Gosh.
And the fire departments there are all volunteer. None of them are paid. I think that maybe the chief might be, possibly, but none of them are paid. They're all volunteer, and they're off the cuff. Like, their stations, because all of the money that they get goes to their trucks and their stations and their gear. They don't spend it on personnel. And I just saw something that they were saying that they were having a hard time getting people, to volunteer.
And I'm sure they got top of the line everything with
Yeah.
that kind of tax.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's like $500. I mean, that's
unreal.
$1,000 a month in taxes.
Yeah, it's unreal.
I know, it's crazy. That's why my parents moved away. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is just opening it up to and doing stuff like what you do and putting it out there is great, because it opens it up for people to listen and be like, hey, maybe I want to, be a volunteer, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but
I think so. I hope it helps. Honestly, I can't say that's the reason the main reason I started is guys like that have done it for the younger guys to hear their stories.
Right.
So that way we've always got them.
Right.
Because like Bubby Anderson, when something happens to Bubby, everything dies with him.
Right.
So now I got his story.
right.
So I'll have it forever. And also wanted people to know that I'm sure you have too. You've been on calls that are really bad, and everybody else seems fine. And you're sitting there thinking, well, man, if I'm the only one this is bothering, I might be a puss.
I have to say that, yeah, you're exactly right. But you are not a normal person. And granted, maybe there are some not normal people, but if you can deal with any type of trauma, no matter whether it's a kid, which of course hits home more for people, for lack of a better, and have it not affect you. You might bury it better than somebody.
Yeah.
But, eventually that's going to be a volcano that's going to shoot up at some point.
Yeah.
If you don't, deal with that. So.
Yeah. And that's the main reason I started it, is to let everybody know everybody feels the same exact way. And this just gives an outlet so they can be like, oh.
Yeah, and like I said, that's the biggest thing is it's kind of like, it's like going and teaching, kids, kindergarten, first, second grade, fire safety. You teach them at that age and they'll remember it when they're older.
Yeah.
And so teaching and letting the kids know, when I say kids, okay, letting the younger firemen know that it's okay to do that. That's something that they'll carry with them, that they learn at a young age rather than trying to reteach them when they're older.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Greg, that's all I got for you, buddy.
All right,
I appreciate this.